Okay.
Go, Mac.
We're back. Another episode of Street Tales. Tyler and I are extremely excited. I want to introduce everybody to Dave Devaney, retired Sergeant Major from the Marine Corps. Now, I'm biased because I served with Sergeant Major Devaney when he was a gunny and a first sergeant. I actually got to go through combat with him. And by far, I would say he is one of the deadliest Marines I've ever met. Also, on top of that, he's one of the, we talk about in the Marine Corps, I got to get into this, Sergeant Major, where, you get like, some officers don't only like officers, some enlisted don't only like enlisted. Sergeant Major Devaney loved Marines, period. No rank. He didn't care. But Sergeant Major Devaney, if you were messed up, he didn't care what rank you are. He called you out on it. But he called you out, but he made you a better Marine. By far, Sergeant Major started out as an 03. You were an 11, right? Right from the get-go.
Yes, sir. Rifleman.
I went to 03, went to Hawaii with 3rd Marines, and from there he got bit by the Scout sniper bug, and he pretty much was an 8541 because we respect 0317, but Sergeant Major is one of the old school legit 8541 Scout snipers. I can legitimately say that most of the sniper doctrine that's out there was influenced heavily by Sergeant Major Devaney and his time with the 3rd Marines, 3rd SOTG, and everything. And I'm going to come out and say it right away. Always been a Sergeant Major Devaney fanboy. I think he's one of the coolest guys. Before I turn it over, I have to tell this cool story. I got to get it out here. So when, after I PCS Sergeant Major, I went to the Pentagon and I was like, I don't want to stay in the Marine Corps if they're going to send me here. I want to be in combat. So I was applying to federal agencies. And I applied to NCIS, and the guy who was doing my interview was a former MP in the Marine Corps. He's like, yeah, I knew this guy, Scout sniper, black belt in 83 different things. He used to train the MPs, and he would do hand to hand for us and stuff like that. He goes, this guy Dave Devaney. I'm like, I know Dave Devaney. He's a first sergeant. He's like, I'm like, I'll reach out to him. I reached out to Sergeant Major Devaney. I didn't talk to him in a year. I'm like, hey, First Sergeant Devaney, I'm not sure if you remember me. I think it was a captain. Captain Macaluso was a lieutenant back then. He emails back 13 seconds later. He's like, of course I remember you. I'm not going to forget you. I'm like, I ran into this guy and I linked him up. That's the type of guy that Sergeant Major Devaney is. He's just awesome. Besides a badass, he's just, you'll hear from the stories. Tyler, all you.
Sergeant, thank you. I don't know how to beat that. So to get started, can you just talk a little bit about how you grew up and it doesn't have to be in depth, but we're going to work our way up to what got you into wanting to be a Marine.
Yeah. So I grew up in Geneva, New York, upstate New York on Seneca Lake, the northern area of it. And grew up with 9 kids in an Irish family, 1 house with 1 bathroom, 11 people. Pretty crazy.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I went to a public school, then I went to a Catholic school for a little bit, and they didn't like me so much when I went back to a public school.
Yeah.
I wasn't really good in school. I didn't like school. I hated school. But then when I joined the Marine Corps, I loved to learn. But you know what? It was interesting to me. That's why. But anyway, yeah, I grew up in New York, and when I was 21 years old, I was pissed off at the world, and Lebanon was going on. So I stopped by the recruiter's office. I tried to join the Army. I was going to go for a Ranger contract, but I stepped out of the office for a minute. And I looked at the wall, and there was a Scout sniper, which I didn't know what it was. I just saw a CBD thing there. And I saw some recon dudes, some guys on a boat. And I was just looking at them, and the Marine recruiter said, hey, come here. So I walked in, and I sat down, and he started talking to me, and the 3 Army recruiters came over and said, hey, he's our applicant, leave him alone. And he told him to fuck off and go away. So I changed my contract and joined the Marine Corps because one dude told 3 to fuck off.
Well, there you go.
That's why I'm a Marine.
That sounds about right. Let me ask you that. What did your parents do? Were they in the military, or what was their background?
My dad was in World War II. He was 36th Infantry. Yeah. We could talk about it later, but I think it was my 3rd or 4th time in Iraq, I ran into 36th Infantry. So one of them gave me the patch. So on my gun belt while I was in Iraq, I wore a 36th Infantry patch, Velcro to my gun belt.
Yeah,
To my dad, in honor of my dad.
we got to go back to that story, Sergeant Major, because you posted that on Facebook, and I've always loved that story. And I'm jumping in again. I'm sorry, Tyler, but again, this is the type of guy Sergeant Major Devaney is. He was loved the Marines. We know we're awesome, and he knew it, but he was like the utmost professional with everybody, and he always gave props. And when he gets to that story, I think it was a command sergeant major, right? That gave you the patch, or I forgot who.
It was.
Yeah.
Actually, it was just a soldier walking down the road, but then he said, go see my sergeant major. I went to see him, and he actually went on their next combat mission. They took an American flag. I didn't know anything about it. And then he called my office. I was a sergeant major of VMAQ 4. And he called my office and said, hey, can you drop by? I came by, and he had a flag with a certificate from the 36th Infantry to my dad. And how cool is that?
Yeah, that is by far one of the coolest freaking stories in the world. I love that story. I love it. All right, Tyler, on you. I'm sorry, man.
Good, man. Jump in. I love it. So your siblings, did any of them join the military?
My oldest sister was in the Air Force and then the Army Reserves, and she was also a customs agent.
So, okay. I like that. Okay,
No,
customs agent. Okay, because that's another interesting thing, that the link between military and law enforcement. But again, we'll get to that because I know you trained. There's so much to get to that I'm trying to really just kind of focus through, because I'm very excited to capture your experience in your career.
Mm-hmm.
So you said 21 is when you decided to join. Did you try to do anything else? Or would you have any other aspirations? Or
No, I had a full-time job working at the hospital, working in as a cook or whatever. I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. And like I say, Marines were in Lebanon. I wanted to go to Lebanon.
All right.
I know it sounds stupid, but whatever.
No,
I did. I wanted to go to Lebanon.
So Colonel Mack, he made a point a couple episodes ago. Colonel Mack was like, the greatest generation. He goes, after 9/11, there was no draft. There was no need to draft. They had more numbers than they needed to. And it was a bunch of 17, 18, 19, whatever, 20, 21-year-old men and women raising their hands saying, I'm going to go fight for this country. And so I fully understand when you're like, hey, Marines are over there fighting in Lebanon. I want to go do that too. I think it's a very noble reason to join. My son is a Marine. I've talked about it many times on the podcast. My daughter is training currently with the police for the Marines. So that might be a path for her. I'm not trying to push her into anything, but it would obviously be proud either way. She'd be a badass and she knows it. No, so it totally makes sense to me. All right. So you get in, what year was that? I'm sorry. And I'm not familiar with all the.
So I joined in 1983.
So that was the year I was born.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So I signed up in 83. I was on delayed entry. So at the time I was a martial artist, and all I did is fight. I just trained and trained and trained for the 8 months on delayed entry. Just all I did is train to fight. And then I went to boot camp, and I was sick like the whole time I was there, like had the crud.
Yeah.
Whatever. But I struggled through my 13 weeks of boot camp. But then, so check this out. So the final words of my heavy drill instructor, the number 2 guy, you have the senior, then the heavy. The final words for him to me were, Recruit Devaney, you won't last 6 months in the infantry. He was off by 29 and a half years.
And he wasn't even a grunt, right, Sir Major?
No.
Yeah.
No, he was an airmaker, sir.
Yep.
He was a aircraft mechanic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So anyway, so I got to infantry training school at Camp Lejeune, and I was an honor graduate. So I got promoted to meritorious PFC, and then I went to 3rd Battalion, 3rd Marines in India Company in Hawaii. And almost as soon as I got there, bam, we're on deployment. We hit, like 13 countries. I think it was all over Asia, into Africa. And I could tell you whole stories of just that deployment.
Well, what's your mindset when you deploy like that? Because that's the other thing. Like you go from being a civilian, working, cooking at a hospital. I mean, obviously you had a fighting background, so I'm assuming there was some confidence. You felt like you could defend yourself. But
Sure.
I would never been in the military or never been in combat in that capacity. But I would say it's a significant difference than saying, hey, I can defend myself in a street fight, as opposed to we're about to go overseas to another country I've never been to, especially as a young man, 21, 22 years old, and shit's real. Like, what is that mindset? Like, what goes through your head?
I see what you're saying, but I can't say that from our first deployment because it was mostly fun.
Okay.
We just went from country to country. We trained with that country, and then we went to Liberty.
Okay.
We'd go get, I don't drink alcohol now, but back then,
Well,
we definitely drank. So we went around the world, seeing sights and training. I think the coolest thing though is I've been to about 40 countries, but the coolest thing about being an infantry type guy is that we see the worst of it. So I see the absolute worst poverty in every country.
Yeah.
And you'd be amazed. The homeless people in this country are like rich people in other countries. And,
Yeah.
I'm not exaggerating either.
No, yeah.
So it's incredibly how poor some of these people are. So anyway, we just hopped from country to country. The coolest thing was, my very first time I ever stepped foot on foreign soil, other than Canada, it doesn't count because I'm from New York. Anyway, was Iwo Jima. So 3-3, we were the first unit to ever do a landing on Iwo Jima.
Yeah.
So we landed on the Black Sands, Iwo Jima. And it still blows my mind that we were looking right at Mount Suribachi, but we couldn't go there. They made us walk all the way around the entire island because we had to stay on the roads. Go all the way around the entire runway and then climb the mountain. And it was like 6,000 degrees. So, yeah. Yeah, go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Yes.
Sacred land.
10 years ago, he had extra black sand and he sent it to me. So I have it standing on with like sand from other countries and stuff like that. So,
I got some sitting right there.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, no, again, raised by Marines. So I grew up with the Marine Corps lore, tradition, the stories from both my mom and my dad and, cousins and uncles. And now I'm getting my brother and my son, and I love it. And nothing but, proud dad, but also proud son, proud brother. And I love the stories. But then when it's like the intricacies inside and, the camaraderie that you build, with your team, your platoon. And again, Mac helped me out here, but, with the people who are close to you, because it's like all Marines love all, they'll all get along for the purpose of the mission, but, you kind of get your core group and those are lifelong friends.
Yeah.
You know what's funny about that? Marines love Marines, but Marines beat the shit out of Marines all the time.
100%.
Oh, yeah. All the time.
Yeah,
Marines are fighting each other all the time.
Oh, yeah.
I would like to add that most of when I went to Okinawa for the first time in 2001, probably some of the alcohol restrictions were probably from Sergeant Major and his buddies when they were there.
I was with you. I was with you in that deployment, right?
But no, I went with 3-4 and then switched over to 1-7.
We relieved you.
Yeah. Yeah, but like the story, like when you went in the 80s and 90s,
Yeah.
I mean, when we get to it, you got to tell him, Sergeant Major, when you became a scout sniper, what was it, like the Easter Sunday where you guys made the rope bridge, in the OOD's like, oh my God.
Yeah. So it's this was 1987. We were in Okinawa, our state platoon, surveillance target acquisition platoon. I was in a scout sniper section. Anyway, it was a Sunday, Easter Sunday. One of the only Sundays I can ever remember, Easter. Anyway, we pulled out our mountaineering gear and we made a 2-rope bridge and we bought a whole bunch of beer and then we all got shit-faced and then we started climbing on the bridge and then everyone would try to knock you off the bridge.
Oh my God.
And you're like 50 feet in the air, but you were hooked to a rope. So,
yeah.
You didn't fall too far. But it was really, really a lot of fun. So the officer of the day, you think might go freak out or whatever, he came over, started laughing, taking pictures of us. A bunch of drunk scout snipers climbing on ropes on Easter Sunday. We were having a great time.
Well, now that would never happen. Like I would say, like Sergeant Major, what would you say? Like probably after 2010, probably early 2000s. It's still like the OOD would have been like, "What are you guys doing?" But that would never happen nowadays.
Well, I can tell you let's see, it would have been 6 years ago. So 2018, 2019. I was in Vietnam with Trump during an APEC summit, and my role was the entrance to the compound where Trump was staying. And so we had all the EOD teams from all the different branches of the military. And we were there for I was there for 2 weeks, but he was there for like 5 days, something like that. 2 days in, one of the EOD teams doesn't report. And they're like, dude, I think they're fucking really sick. I don't know what's going on. And I'm like, well, what happened? And I'll let you decide which branch it was. That EOD team got a cab, went into the mountains of Vietnam because they wanted to try Cobra wine. They rolled up on a guy in the back of his house pouring moonshine into just random bottles and sticking dead snakes in it. And they just drank Cobra wine in this dude's backyard all night and woke up the next day like deathly ill. Yeah, so they were down for the rest. Their commander was fucking furious. I was laughing. I was like, well, once I was like, are they going to die? Are they good? He's like, no, they're just fucking hungover and they're sick as shit because they're drinking dead snake venom moonshine.
Well, that's a trick.
That was the Marines. So
when you do Cobra Gold, so in 2000, I've done Cobra Gold multiple times since the 80s, 90s. But 2002, 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, we went to Cobra Gold in Thailand. Okay, so we had to climb over this mountain. It took us 5 days, 4 nights to climb over this mountain with this recon team. But before we did that, the recon guy is giving us at least classes on how to kill a cobra.
Oh.
It's actually crazy.
Yeah.
You actually grab the cobra by the tail and just pull on it like this, and it straightens out. You hold it there and it cut its head off.
Jeez.
But then they pour the blood in whiskey, and we all drink the whiskey. So every Marine there is drinking cobra blood whiskey. So we killed 2 cobras, poured them into whiskey, drank them. And I was a company gunny, and I could speak a little bit of Thai because my wife is Thai. I just a little tiny bit.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they were like, "Hey, Commando!" They called me Commando. "Hey, Commando, drink." So I started. I don't drink too much, but I started drinking out of this water bottle that's cut with whiskey in it. So I'm drinking out of this. These guys trying to take a picture. I'm getting like 3 shots. I take it down. He's like, "Oh, I wasn't ready." I'm like, "Holy shit, dude! 3 shots are ready." So I take it up, get a couple more shots, takes a picture. And like 10 minutes later, I look at my first sergeant and I go, "Holy shit, is it hot out here?" He goes, "No, you're drunk." I'd had like 7 shots in like 12 seconds, you know?
Yeah.
I was shit-faced. And then the next day, we climbed over the mountain for 5 days.
Oh my God.
It was terrible.
Just
Oh,
making
that's
it hard.
great.
I want to jump back. Hold on. I want to jump back because we're talking about Iwo Jima, which I have been to in my travels. And again, both my parents were Marines. So I told them and they were like freaking out. But the other one that I went to that was really cool. I mean, they're both cool, phrase it that way. But Bella Wood in France.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I haven't been there.
one, I'd never heard of it. Get there.
Yeah.
My mom and dad are like, "Oh my God, you got to get water from the fountain or something
Yep.
like that." And I was like, I don't even know.
Yep.
I had to go find, but
Devil
it's like,
dog.
yeah, it's a Marine Corps Devil Dog and it has water. And all these Marines were like, I mean, we basically had to spend 2 hours just like corralling everybody. Like, "Hey guys, we need to get on post. Like stuff's happening right now." But I will say in all the countries where they have specifically, not just like, you know, American soldiers or Marine memorials, but specifically, this is a memorial for Marines. The level of reverence they have for the support that was provided, it was very impressive to me. I don't know that we necessarily do the same in the United States or that we've had maybe the same level of cooperation. Anyway, I'm talking out of my ass because I don't talk about.
On Guam,
Yes,
Guam, the main road is called Marine Drive after U.S. Marines. The main road,
it's very impressive.
Yeah.
I've never been to Guam,
the main street, downtown.
but no, I wanted to touch on that because it is the way that other countries have that respect, reverence, whatever it is, because they take. I mean, it's beautiful. Anyway, it was a unique experience for me. But we jumped to Scout Sniper. But hold on. So you travel around, or again, correct me, you're a grunt, infantry, whatever it is.
Yep.
What was the process to be a Scout Sniper? Was it just you saw that picture and you're like, I want to be that guy, or like?
Okay, so I did one deployment. We're out on ships, and the Scout Snipers stayed platoon on another ship. I didn't even know what the hell they were. I had no idea. But then in between the next deployment, we went to a CAX, which is 29 Palms, Combined Arms Exercise. We spent a month out there doing combined arms, and this dude walks by with a shotgun with a scope on it. And I'm from upstate New York. I'm like, "Hey, why do you have a scope on your shotgun?" And he's like, "It's a sniper rifle, you fucking idiot," and kept on going. And I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
So I did another deployment. And then after that, at the end of that deployment, State Platoon was looking for people to volunteer. So I volunteered with a bunch of other people. Got to stay. We went to Scout Sniper School and then deployments after deployment. So I did 2 more deployments with the Scout Snipers. I did one as just a regular Scout Sniper. And then my next deployment was Maritime Special Purpose Force RNS leader as a corporal. And then I got a sergeant after that. But anyway, as a corporal, and I led an 8-man team for 6 months where we were doing on-call stuff, where you're ready to fly out and go anywhere in the world. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So our Scout Snipers were part of the Maritime Special Purpose Force, which is you'll have reconnaissance guys that are kicking indoors. You'll have RNS guys doing eyes. You have Scout Snipers doing your shooting and your eyes. And you'll have an infantry platoon as your backup or trailers, they call them. So, no, sorry.
Got it.
Yeah.
No.
Well, that's a good question, sir. Our indocs were never the same. So it depended upon how much time we had. Sometimes they were 3 days, and sometimes they were 10 days.
Okay. How was the one
The
you took?
longer we had, the better. What's that, sir?
How long was yours, the one to get in?
3 days, I think.
Okay.
Listen, they just want to see if you got hurt. Same thing when we ran them. You just drive them into the dirt, and you know what? I don't care if you know about how to be a Scout Sniper. I want to know if you know how to do your job. So when they'd come to us, if they were 0351, I'd ask about how do they use their anti-tank weapons, etc. I didn't care if they knew how to be a scout sniper. But land navigation is the most important thing, which, if you don't mind, I'll tell you something real quick. How I was punished by a staff sergeant, and I was so pissed off at him, but it was the greatest punishment ever. I was in this thing called Super Squad competition, and I was just a rifleman.
Oh, I remember this story.
Yes, sir. And so my fire team leader has to go on emergency leave. So my staff sergeant says, "Hey, Lance Corporal Devaney, you're the navigator for this platoon, or for the Super Squad for this operation." And I begged him. I said, "Staff sergeant, I can do anything. Just please don't make me navigate, because I don't want to get us lost." And he's like, "I don't care. You know what? You're the navigator from now till forever." So for like the next 5 months, all I did is navigate. And guess what? When you get to Scout Sniper School, what's the first thing they do? Navigation. And if you fail, you're gone. You'd be surprised how many people fail school by the very first event due to PFT, then the land nav, and they get rid of, probably 30% of the people right there.
Well, let me ask you.
Anyway, he did me a favor.
Yeah, no, for sure. Let me ask you that without getting into the details about. There's a lot of videos about scout, actually sniper school, but what are they trying to get out of you? Like learning how to shoot, I get the concept, but like knowing how to shoot, being a sniper, I believe are two different things, right? Would you agree with that?
Well, okay, so here's the big thing is you've got snipers, and this is very important. You have snipers, you have scout snipers. As a ranger, and actually a ranger student explained this to me when I was a sergeant major in Weapons Training Battalion, Quantico. He says, "Sergeant Major, you got to understand this." He says, "We are snipers. We have our sniper rifle, and a commander tells me what to do. Go here, shoot this, do that." Marine Corps Scout Snipers, which don't exist anymore, but we were an autonomous unit. We could take a 2 to 6 man team and go do whatever we had to do for the lines. And we were the only ones in the battalion that were trained to do that. So we'd do short range reconnaissance, where you'd have recon battalion would do medium range reconnaissance, and Force Recon does deep reconnaissance. So if I had not been in state platoon and Scout Snipers, I wouldn't have stayed in the Marine Corps, to tell you the truth.
Why'd they get rid of it? I'm sorry, I wasn't aware they got.
Yeah. So what they did, Tyler, is I say I was just a grunt. I wasn't a scout sniper. And Sergeant Major, you correct me, is they now they have a recon sniper course, which now they want to only send to make them 0317 because they redesignate the MOS a number of years ago. They only want to send snipers to the reconnaissance battalions and like MARSOC and stuff. So it used to be where there used to be a state platoon, roughly about 20, 25 guys, maybe, right, Sergeant Major?
Yeah. Well, usually like 18.
Yeah.
16 to 18. And you could get bigger.
And those guys were the battalion commander's eyes and ears. And like and I'm sorry I'm jumping in, Sergeant Major, and correct me if I'm wrong. Like,
you're absolutely right.
Marine Corps sniper school, scout sniper school, like you become a shooter, but you're like a reconnaissance guy, surveillance and target acquisition. You go out there and like, you're not shooting all the time. You're like saying, hey, you're calling back to, Suicide 6. Like, we got an enemy column coming down this road, this and that. And that's what they do. They're like, Roger, keep eyes on it and advise me of their movement. They got rid of, I cannot fathom why the Marine Corps got rid of sniper school. Like, it's world renowned, Tyler. Like, FBI, regular SWAT, and HRT, they send their guys to Marine Corps Scout Sniper School. That's where they go. Before the SEALs, correct me if I'm wrong too, Sergeant, before the SEALs really had like their version of sniper schools, Dev Group guys, regular SEAL team guys, they went to Marine Corps Scout Sniper School. That's where they went.
I had SEALs go through my urban sniper course when I was at our SOTG. They love Marine Corps. SEALs do have their own sniper program now, but they're still snipers. Still not scout snipers. Right.
Does any group have scout snipers? Did like somebody take that, or they just got rid of the scout sniper?
No, they got so they have scout platoons. Oh, okay. They just don't have snipers in the battalion level anymore.
Got it.
Yeah,
okay.
Which is the dumbest thing in the world, which I do not like. If I ever get to talk to the commandant, I'm going to say like, no, seriously, I don't get it. It was such like, and I know a lot of grunt officers, that were like, why are you doing this? This is such an asset to the battalion. This is like where you don't need to rely on like a reconnaissance platoon because they're doing their own missions and you're not going to get it. Tyler, what the SF used to have is this SIF platoon that would deploy with whatever company or battalion from SF. Basically, they were like one level below Delta And if there was like a hostage situation or something and Delta couldn't get there in time, those were the guys that send in. But they dissolved that too. So I mean, I
didn't know that.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
They dissolved it. They dissolved it a number of years ago. So yeah, sir. I'm sorry. I get on the tent. Did you go to sniper school in Pendleton or
Hawaii? Sir. Hawaii.
Okay.
Hawaii.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So you had the nice, lovely lava rocks the whole time there that all the guys tell me.
Yeah. A lot of jungle stuff.
Yeah. So
yeah, it changes the game. All right. So we go through you had a vast career, but I'm just trying to walk through it a little bit. You were you volunteered, your scout sniper. Was that basically your again, correct me, your job for the remainder of your career?
Okay.
Yeah. How did that work?
So I did 2 deployments as a regular infantry guy. Then I did 2 deployments as a scout sniper. Then I got ordered to the drill field.
Okay.
So I was a drill instructor for 2 years. And then I went back to State Platoon and did 2 more deployments. And then I went and did Special Operations Training Group and JTF 510 for 6 years after that. After 2 years, or after 3 years on State Platoon, I went to be a drill instructor.
Did you enjoy that?
No, I did not.
So
yeah,
I got to jump in again. So remember how Sergeant Major said he joined because he saw Lebanon and he wanted to go.
Yeah.
So when he got sent to the drill field, Desert Storm was cooking off, and he's like, "I'm not going. I want to get out of here. I want to go back to 3-3. I want to go to combat." They're like, "No, you're staying at the drill field." So I feel bad for those platoons that went through for the past few years. Sergeant Major Devaney, he tells stories about it, but I mean, those guys still love him to this. But he probably took out his anger of not being able to go to Desert Storm on those poor kids at the time.
Well, the thing is,
I tortured him, but with love.
With love, exactly. My thing is, because even my son, right? He, and I mean, my son, my brother, my dad, anybody I ever talk to, they talk about their drill instructors and they talk about how hard it was and what fucking assholes. But at the same time, there's this level of respect and they had their favorites. And like, that is your impression on you are teaching, training, pounding in the culture for the next generation. I don't know. I guess, again, I'm not a combat guy, but it's like that you're putting your mark on the next group. You know what I mean? That's coming up behind you.
Absolutely.
But I will say, of all the drill instructors I've ever talked to, they also all said that was their worst assignment because they were fucking tired and they were tired. It was basically that wasn't their goal and they wanted to go do something else. But it's like, so having to deal with that. I will say, having gone to Parris Island twice now, possibly for a third time, the drill instructors, they are fucking machines, man. I still love it to this day, watching them full sprint in the tight uniform like a gazelle. It's very impressive. So then after drill, you went.
Let me tell you real quick about the drill field. I'll summarize it real quick. Once I got there, I was at 3rd Battalion Lima Company. If you've been to Parris Island, recently they changed it, but it used to be 3rd Battalion out in the middle of a swamp by itself.
Yeah.
That's for one. And I was at Lima Company, which meant we were in the back of the swamp and you could look out both doors and see everything in the world.
Yeah.
Nothing could come after you, like, whatever. Anyway, so I was at Lima Company. I worked 6 straight platoons. I was exhausted. My first platoon, I was a 4th hat. What's drill instructor? So 4th in line. I had no mission except for to torture recruits. So for 13 weeks, listen, this is no shit. For 13 weeks, I never answered a recruit's question or let him make a head call. 13 fucking weeks. No, I mean a personal head call. Yeah. So, I mean, we give them head calls, go, but if the service recruit needs a head call for 13 weeks, every time a recruit came up to me, I told them to shut the fuck up before they could get it out of their mouths. Never, except for once. This recruit came up to me and he caught me off guard. He's like, this recruit needs to make a sitting head call, which means he's got to take a shit. Well, I looked over and I saw this recruit named Bowles. So I said, come here, Bowles. I put him over there. I had the recruit grab him by the arm and I had him walking around in circles. I said, what are you doing, boy? He says, making a bowel movement, sir. I said, get the fuck out of here. Anyway, so check this out. So I'm not allowed to answer questions. I'm not allowed to do anything. I can't even drill them on the proper foot. When I drill them, I have to drill them on the wrong foot. I have to do everything to piss them off. Even when they're ready to graduate, I still have to torture them. I'm forced to. But my next platoon, I skipped from a 4th hat all the way to the 2nd hat, the heavy.
Oh, wow.
Well, here's the problem. I just spent 13 weeks drilling on the wrong foot.
Yeah.
And now I got to teach drill. So anyway, I did 3 platoons as a heavy, and then I did 2 as a sergeant senior, which is almost unheard of down there. I think when I was a sergeant senior, there was like 2 of us in the whole regiment. Anyway, I survived. I was meritoriously not demoted, and I moved on and went to State Platoon and did 2 more deployments with State Platoon as a platoon sergeant and chief scout.
Now, these deployments, because you said that the first time you went and trained, are you training with other militaries, law enforcement?
Yes, yeah. Anytime we go to another country, we train with that country. Now, you just asked about law enforcement. Okay, I have been in different situations where State Platoon, we will work with SWAT teams, even Honolulu SWAT, etc. So throughout my career, man, I've worked with SWAT teams all over the place, to include SRTs, military police SWAT teams, where, they trip out because they point a gun at me and I take the gun away before they can even push the trigger, and it freaks them out. Yeah. Anyway, so then I did the 2 deployments for State Platoon, 2 more. So now I'm at 6 deployments. And then I go to SOTG on Okinawa, Special Operations Training Group. And I worked at helicopter rope, HRST, helicopter rope suspension training. So all we did is we trained people how to fast rope, spy rig, and rappel out of helicopters. And then we did clip assault school, etc. But what was I going to tell you? Okay. So after I was there for about a year, the RNS, for instance, surveillance and sniper guys, they started asking me for help to teach over there. So I was working at both places. And then I was an airborne. I was a jump master. So I was the unit jump master. I was working at HRST, and the snipers wanted me. So I went to the colonel. I says, "Hey, sir, I can only do one job. Give me one job. Do RNS or HRST. I could do the jump master on the side." So they immediately moved me to RNS. And then I stayed there for 4.5 years. And in my last couple of years, I was in charge of RNS. It was the hardest and the greatest job you could ever imagine.
Yeah, that's
just absolutely incredible job.
Now, was it what made it incredible? Was it the mission or the people or both? Or
oh my God! So when I'm training, here's the great thing is when I'm training urban snipers, these guys have already been to sniper school, scout sniper school.
Yeah.
So these guys have already been through, depends on what year it is, 8 weeks or 14 weeks, whatever it is for scout sniper school. But anyway, they're already trained when I get them. And now, basically, my urban sniper school is kind of like you guys would do with SWAT. We train mostly from just 300 and in, and we train for shooting very rapid and very accurately. Are you familiar with color dot drills? So you take a silhouette and you cut dots out of the silhouette, and then you paint the dots on there. So you have 16 dots, 4 across, 4 down. So you got 16 dots, and you paint them different colors. So then you tell the snipers white top to bottom. So they have to shoot the white dots wherever they are from top to bottom. Yeah. And then they have to end by shooting it in the face. So it's always 5 shots, 4 dots, and then 1 to the brain. And that's how we train at every level. We did drive-by shootings. I shit you not. We would drive up on a range, the van door opens up, the sniper shoots, and they drive away. That was one of our qualifications.
I like that.
You had to do drive-by shootings out of Humvees, vans, cars. It was awesome.
How long was the urban sniper when you guys ran it, Sergeant Major?
3 weeks.
Oh, that's man.
We talked about that when I was in the Secret Service, because we roll around, everyone sees the pictures, whatever. All the guys are rolling in the armored cars with the guns. Mm-hmm. They're always at the ready. And I'm like, when have you ever trained shooting from a vehicle or an armored vehicle or deploying from a vehicle and then shooting? Cricket.
At State, we did at diplomatic security.
You guys did, but service does not.
Yeah, which is funny because because part of the reason that is because most of the firearms guys, when I went through State, were all former Marines, and most of them were all former Scout snipers. There was a guy, he passed away since Pishak. I'm not.
Yeah, Gunny Pishak. Everybody knows him.
Yep. He ran the firearms for awesome guy. He ran it for State for training and everything. Uh-huh. And I remember we had guys. That's why we did all this stuff. We shot from the vehicles. We would deploy and shoot. We did. One of the guys was a former force guy. I don't remember his name. Firearms instructor there at State, and we did drive-by shootings. We would be, and when we did it, it was safe, but he did it like we were doing off-road stuff. We were doing it, and he was going over all the bumps and everything, and then he's like, "Let's go see. You gotta see where your hits are going and stuff like that. You're not just spraying and praying. You gotta, because he's like, hey, this is law enforcement. You got to be accountable for every round." So yeah, I that was 05, 06 time frame. I don't know how it is now, because there was and the guys who did the tactics there was 2 former Delta guys and a former Green Beret that did a lot of the tactics too. So State ran solid training, but that's weird, Tyler, that Secret Service you guys didn't shoot from vehicles.
No, not a lot. We did it. I did it on my own with people who knew how to do it, or
Mhm.
kind of like Adam, what we talked about, where you get your own training. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
you expect me to be able to do this. I need to go figure out how to do this. But let me ask you, we kind of jumped around, but when did you guys both serve together in Afghanistan, Iraq? When was that?
Iraq.
So
okay.
I got cross-decked to 1-7 because I told you there was an overage of lieutenants. I'm not a shitbag. I would admit if I was. And I went to Charlie Company, and Sergeant Major had Alpha, or went by Animal Company. And
Animal Company, yep.
let me tell you something, though. This is the level of respect that Sergeant Major had in the battalion, but also from his company. So we got issued our desert camis, our tricolors, for the most part, and we got boonies with them. And, and every Marine, I would say like literally 85% of them looked like Sergeant Major Devaney. He was Gunny Devaney at the time, but he had it. Do you remember, Sergeant Major, where you 550 cord your boonie to your cargo pocket, so you didn't? So
absolutely,
yep,
man, 550 cord hanging off the back like a cattail.
Yep,
absolutely.
And I don't remember. Did you put your name on one of your cargo pockets, the left or right? I think like you stenciled your name Devaney, I think, or I don't remember if you did that.
No, I had my guys put up their blood type on the top of their boots.
Yes.
Their boots. And then on each arm, I didn't give a shit. And on the top of their helmets.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Yeah. So that's the level, like guys had that. And then the other companies started doing that. And because they're like, well, listen, if Gunny Devaney is saying this, like, I'm sorry, all the companies except for a company that began with B didn't do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's absolutely correct.
Yes.
Absolutely correct. They hated me. They freaking hated me.
Yeah. Yeah. But this is, again, Tyler, this is the thing. Like, I get there, and I don't know anybody, but, Sergeant Major's like, I remember I had a 0-my rifle, and I went out with him. We went out to Udara Range. I went with him and some of the snipers and stuff like that. He's like, hey, sir, come on, we'll take you out. We'll get you and everything like that. And I remember he's doing with the snipers, he was giving them different, because he was giving them different commands to zero their rifles. He goes to me, he's like, sir, you go 3 clicks up and three clicks to the right, because he knew I wasn't a trained sniper or didn't have a scoped rifle. But that's the type of guy he was. And he went out of his way. He went from company to company, except for company with B, when we were in Kuwait, and he was teaching guys like basic CQB. He didn't care that he wasn't like, oh, you're not in my company. No, he's like, last time I checked, it says U.S. Marines and you have an Eagle, Globe, and Anchor. I'm training you. That's how it was. And that's the type of guy he is. And I will die on a hill if anybody argues differently and says that, like, Sergeant Major. No, he went above and beyond. And we'll get later on, when he became a Sergeant Major, he was in, quote unquote units, like a logistics unit and then an air wing unit. But those kids were trained killers when he got hold of them, and when he was with them. Yep. So
like the colonel's saying, if you don't mind, sir. So there's a saying, every Marine's a rifleman.
Yeah.
And I actually wrote I have an entire damn near a book's worth of stuff on every Marine's a rifleman. So when I left Special Operations Training Group in 2001, one of my buddies, recon dude, he goes, hey, Dave, I know you say no to anybody. You won't say no to anybody. You train everybody. I says, all right, whatever. He says, that might have worked here, but that's not going to work in the grunts. So I got to 1-7, and my commander was Captain Barr. I don't want to get into details, but he's actually, he works up the road from me here. Okay. Anyway, he's a badass. But I said to him, I says, hey, sir, he knew I came from Special Operations Training Group. And I said, hey, if you give me an opportunity, I will help you create the baddest motherfucking company you've ever seen in your life. And he goes, Gunny, go for it. Oh, and actually this started after my first live fire. So my first live fire, they're like, hey, we're going out to do a live fire. I get out there and I watch these Marines shoot 18 gazillion rounds at nothing. At nothing.
Sounds like 29 palms. That's
29 palms.
Yep. Yeah, that's
what they were doing. They were training for maneuver warfare. So these guys are setting a base of fire. These guys are doing that. And I was like, this is bullshit. So what I did, which I still think was ingenious, is I went down to the LAVs, light armored vehicle guys, and their ammo cans they're big. So what I did is I got like 100 of those ammo cans from them, and then I just carried them in my vehicle out to the desert, and I could put targets everywhere. I didn't need a range. I just set up ranges because it's 29 palms. You can shoot just about anywhere you want.
Yeah.
So you just go out there and I'd set up my range, but I changed it and I put a kill zone in there. I put a kill zone that they couldn't see. We used a nail, so it was invisible. So if they hit in the kill zone, we gave them a point of the kill zone, or 1 and then 2, whatever. But we made them hit the targets. And then the captain, I said, sir, let's play a game here. It plays to be a winner. So every time we trained from that point on, we kept, statistics on what platoon shot the best. And whoever shot the best got to go to the Army and get on liberty right away. It pays to be a winner.
Yeah.
So we did all kinds of stuff like that. And so I did a lot of things with that company. When we hike, weapons company or the weapons platoon have to carry much heavier gear. And what we would always do is we'd go to the Army, so we'd have 170 Marines at the armory trying to get all their shit out of one window. And I was like, this is asinine. Here's what we're going to do. Weapons platoon is always first. And I'll give them a half hour, and then every half hour later, I'll give another platoon. So they just walked up and got their gear and walked away. Right in sitting at the armory for 2 hours doing absolutely freaking nothing. So I set up my humps that way too. Weapons in the front, and then I operated first, second, third, and then the next hump was second, third, first, etc. So I rotated them, because being the last platoon in the hike always sucks.
Yeah, the accordion
Everyone
effect.
stretches out and you get screwed. Yeah, all the time. Yeah.
I think because I remember when I was in 3-4, I had a company commander that was crazy, but he was actually really big. He would do things like that too. He would get 4x4s, and like when we were out in the field, you guys were in Oki at the time, so we were out in the field because just before you guys got back, and he would like the fire team that knocked down that 4x4 first would get, he would bring them a pizza out when we were in the field. But he did it where it's like, all right, you only got 50 rounds per guy. So, I remember that because, Sergeant Major, better than me, like a lot of times I don't know how it is now, but like a lot of times it was like, all right, we're just going to go out and do a dump X. Remember at the end of CAX when you're out at Lovick Lake, and they're like, I'm like, what are we shooting at? We're just spraying ammo. Like, we should be getting some feedback here.
Mm-hmm.
I
didn't do that. In fact, when we were deployment, after we relieved you from 3-4, you were there in 2001. We got there in 2002.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the end of the year, like September, my buddies from SOTG they were still there, and they're like, hey, we got to get rid of 100,000 9mm rounds. So I took 50 Marines from 1-7, 10 from each company. I took them down to Camp Hansen for 5 days and shot their asses off. So they got like 200 rounds a day for 5 days. They were absolute badasses when they were done.
Yeah.
Because I don't do that simple shooting. We do some combat shooting.
Damn right.
Yeah, Sergeant Major trained his guys to be combat shooters. They may have not gotten like this in the bullseye. They may have gotten this, but those rounds were all in kill zones on dudes.
Yeah.
Sarge, let me ask you, where did you get that ideology from? Was it something you were taught, experienced, or you just kind of sat back and looked at it and was like, this is dumb, we should do it a different way? Like, where did that come from?
That's a good question. So this is my philosophy from when I was a corporal on, is that I will do everything in my power to ensure that Marine knows everything they can to survive in combat. So that when their family comes to me and says, did you do everything you could to save them in combat? I better be able to answer yes. So I train my Marines hard. And I even had captains tell me, I stayed with them, they'd be like, hey, Sergeant, you need to relax. You're killing these guys. I says, hey, sir, I'm training for combat.
Yeah, I wanted to go back. I'm sorry, Tyler.
Yeah.
I wanted to go back when, Sergeant Major, when you were talking about like for the INDOC where you would question like a 51, a 41, a 31, or 11 on something. I can tell you this, okay? Granted, I was an officer, never an enlisted guy, I was an officer grunt, but I can tell you this, that you go up, he can be a bag of ass or like a belligerent grunt, but if you like, hey, I remember from my experience too, if I'm like, hey, teach me about, like to a 51, teach me some cratering charges. They're like, you serious, sir? I'm like, absolutely. They're like, all right, sir, sit down. They wanted to tell you about their MO. They love talking about their MOS. That's what they wanted to do. They wanted to go like, I'm like, because I remember, I'm like, well, I'm trying to get us like set up. So when I was in XO, I'm like, I'm trying to get some like, so we can do some demo ranges. Like, okay, sir, let me sit down and help you with this. And then I would have all the fins in my office trying like explaining everything to me. And that's what Marines, like when you talk to Marines, like Marines, right, Sergeant Major, that's what they wanted. That's all they wanted to be treated like these guys were. the experts for for their rank and for their they weren't going to tell you maneuver warfare or something like that. Some of these guys knew it and they knew it better than most people, but they wanted to train you. They didn't care if you I remember going as a lieutenant, and then when I was in the reserves as a captain, as a major, going hey, let's talk about some they're like, you serious? So I'm like, absolutely. Let's talk this. I want to get this shit out there for you guys. I would say, I go, you guys are the experts. I know a lot of this stuff, but I don't know it as well as you do. And Sergeant Major, they probably loved that when you were grilling them on infantry knowledge. That's what guys
Absolutely. Sorry, and this is on a different subject, but when I was at VMAQ 4, Electronic Warfare Squadron, I was on my second deployment to Iraq. And with that squadron, it was my fourth deployment. And one day, the MAG, Marine Air Group Sergeant Major, came out to my squadron, and he said, hey, can you show me around? So it was it was a really hot day, but no one was around. The airplanes were in the air, and there was nothing around. So I went through and I briefed him on how each section works. And at the end, he goes, hey, are you an air winger? And I go, no, I'm not I'm not an air winger. What are you talking about? He goes, how do you know all this stuff? And I was like, I'd never thought about it, but I paid enough attention over 3 years that I actually accidentally knew what the hell I was talking about with the wing, kind of. But I was the kind of guy, man, I'll tell you what, I mean, I went out and I tried to learn things from them. They taught me. Yeah. I helped them put an engine on an airplane one day. The truth is, I didn't help them do shit, but I went out there and I touched some things and I got dirty. Yeah. And that's all that mattered. One day they put me in a little forklift and I put a pod up to an airplane. And I said, if I crash, Corporal, I'm going to kill you. But, I went out there and I let the Marines teach me stuff. But like the Colonel was saying, so one day when I was at SOTG, I was in a flight suit and I was walking back to the armory. And the only people that wore flight suits on Camp Hansen was SOTG. So I'm walking down the street and we had just got the new machine gun, the 240 Golf. We had the M60 machine gun, so we're transferring over. And I see this young Lance Corporal walking down the street from the armory from 3rd Marines. And I said, hey, I was a staff sergeant. I said, hey, stop. Can you give me a quick class on that machine gun? I've never seen it before. And he was just shocked that a staff sergeant with SOTG would ask a Lance Corporal a question. But he gave me an incredible brief on the machine gun, and that was it. But I did the same thing with parachutes. I asked the guy how he's packing a parachute. I asked him how to do it. It took him 30 minutes to explain it to me. I said, how long does it normally take? He says, 8 minutes.
I love that.
I was like, oh, I'm sorry. But I was sorry, it took so long. But he goes, no, you're the first person that ever gave a shit about what I do, ever. I learned how to drive forklifts. I drove forklifts in the reserves just because, I like it. Yeah.
So I got to chime in, and this is again, and sorry, Major, this is I attribute a couple of guys I went to TBS with that are still in that are full boards. They're both prior grunts. My one buddy is in charge of right now the MARSOC training regiment, and my other buddy was a 31st MU commander. I learned how to be Marines from the guys I went to TBS with, a lot of the prior service guys. And I remember my buddy who's the colonel at Mars, he's the nicest dude in the world. And I learned just be nice to guys and they'll help you out. So I learned this from you too, Sergeant Major, because I saw you, I remember in 29 Palms in Kuwait and Iraq, how you talked to guys, you gave them responsibility, you treated them like Marines. You didn't care if they were PFC or you didn't care if they were a 4-year PFC. You okay, you fucked up, but you know what? You're under me now. I'm going to give you a chance, and you're going to, I learned shit like that. I remember I was down at Camp Lejeune in April of 21. I was doing when I was in the reserves, I was down there for a month. I was like a 2MEF liaison officer. Because I was a Marine emergency preparedness liaison officer. I really had nothing to do down there. It was awesome though. Here I am, I'm a lieutenant colonel, and he's the chief of police of my old department, but at the time he was a lieutenant, but he was a scout sniper with 1-8 and he did Panama and everything like that. And he always was good to me. And so I'm like, hey, LT, I'm going down there. I'll try and get you a shirt from 1-8, a scout sniper shirt. So I'm driving around one day. I'm in camis. I'm in my truck, and I see these 4 kids walking. I'm like, yeah, these kids are snipers. They're in boots and utes. That they're a little bit more jacked than the standard grunt, but they got their spotting scopes and everything. And I pull up to them, and I'm like, hey, you guys scout snipers? They're like, yes, sir. I'm like, I'm like, who you guys with? They're like 1-6. I'm like, oh, is 1-8 on deck? They're like, no, they're out in deployment. I'm like, damn. And I was talking to him for a second. And I'm like, hey, what did I like fucking kill one of your mothers? I said to the guy, they're like, no, sir, we really don't get many people that talk to us, let alone a lieutenant colonel. Like, we're not getting yelled at. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? They're telling me how they would get yelled at all the time for like, just by staff NCOs or officers sometimes. Like if they like, I'm like, what are you talking about? Yeah, we had somebody from another, I think 3-6 or something yelling at us because we were doing like stalking exercises in their area, and he came out, and I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? You guys are training. You're not like boozing out, but you're training your tradecraft. And I'm like, serious? They're like, absolutely, sir. So I was talking to him for like 35, 40 minutes, I remember. And this was around like, 1500, 1530 or something like that. And I remember some staff sergeants he's like going to be like, he started like, what the fuck are you guys? I'm like, hey, staff sergeant, they're with me. They're like, he's like, oh shit, sorry, sir. I'm like, and he walks away. I'm like, oh shit, you guys really aren't fucking kidding me, man. You guys get yelled at for, I don't get it. They're like, I remember leaving, I gave them my card. I'm like, hey, shoot me an email if you guys ever need anything or get into trouble. And I remember the one kid who was jacked, and he probably could have balled me up in seconds. He's like, sir, I appreciate you coming up and talking to us like Marines. I go, guess what? I go, that's what you do. It doesn't matter what rank you talk to you as Marines. I go, that's what I learned from my buddies. And, I go from prior staff NCOs that I had and prior like officers that I was under. You treat them like Marines. And Sergeant Major, I learned that, one of the people I learned that from is you. And I will say that to the day I die,
Appreciate that, sir.
Yeah. But let me tell you something, Tyler, though. Like, if I was fucked up, Sergeant Major wouldn't tell me in front of the Marines. But let me tell you something, like, I never did this, but he'd be like, you're fucked up, sir. You go do officer things right now. I'll take care of this. He would do that. But he wouldn't. He's not doing it because he's just trying to flex. And I got to go. One more thing I say, and then I'll get back to you, Sergeant Major. He always talked about like guys that went to DI school and went on the drill field. That became their personality. A lot of guys, like, they thought that they can bully. I don't know, bully, but like they would just be like, oh, I don't know what you think you're doing. But they were trying to with fellow staff NCOs, like especially junior enlisted Marines and some officers. I never knew Sergeant Major Devaney went to the drill field until he told me, because you were the complete opposite of that, where like you didn't need to be like, I was a DI. No. And I remember you always saying like some guys, like that was their only way, their version of leadership was thinking they were on the drill field everywhere they went. Am I right?
Absolutely, sir.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you something. You find, and I don't care what the craft is, if you find somebody that no one wants to talk to, they always yell at them, it's because they're hiding the fact that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. That's a fact.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Find a guy that yell, oh, I don't talk to him, he's an asshole. It's because he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. The only time I ever yelled at Marines in my senior time were always officers. Always. I didn't raise my, just some officer would push my buttons, and I'd have to, let them know.
Yeah. But
because if you don't outrank my boss, go the fuck away. So that's all there's to it.
Yeah. And this is I mean, I like, this is why I talk to guys from 1-7 and they still talk about you and shit like that. And like, you looked out more for the enlisted. There's no after, but that was your job as a senior enlisted guy. But you look, like I said, like I was new to there, and you looked out for me, and I'll always remember that. But you would look out for anybody. But if an officer, well, you did it to staff NCOs too. Like he would probably use a little bit more colorful language. But if an officer was fucked up, Sergeant Major he told them, like, hey, like, this isn't like, if like I can, it never happened, but if like some officer's trying to say like, when I was at IOC, this is how we did CQB, Sergeant Major would be like, sir, get the fuck out of here. I got this. I've actually done all this shit and stuff. So
it's kind of funny. You just think so when I checked into 1-7, I didn't have a job. I got to the Sergeant Major. He looks through my record, sees I've been to like 50 schools. He's like, what are you doing here? So I made my monitor that gives you jobs. I called him a bitch, and then I got orders of 29 pounds.
I remember that story too.
That's the truth.
Yes.
So he called me devil dog. I was a gunny, he was a gunny. So that's like calling me a bitch. So I came out and called him a bitch. Within 24 hours, I had orders of 29 pounds. But it was the greatest thing that ever happened. Yeah. He did me a favor by sending me 20 pounds because I got to 1-7. What the colonel doesn't tell you is that he was in Charlie Company, the most famous company in the history of the Marine Corps. Suicide Charlie.
2 guidons.
They have two flags, 2 guidons.
Why is that?
Yes. Yeah, go ahead. Tell them, sir. You want to throw the history at them? This is awesome.
So at Guadalcanal, 1942, same action that John Basilone got his gunnery sergeant John Basilone from New Jersey got his Medal of Honor for. So at Henderson Field, the battalion, Charlie took the brunt of it.
A Japanese division on one company.
And
stop one company.
Literally bodies, stacked bodies, Marines were behind Japanese bodies engaging. And in the morning after the battle, somebody took a piece of Japanese silk from a parachute and wrote suicide on it. I think they spelt it wrong too.
They did. They spelled it incorrectly. Suicide Charlie with skull and crossbones.
And they put the flag up. And to this day, it's the only company in the Marine Corps that's authorized 2 guidons because of that action.
Absolutely.
That's amazing.
I don't know. Did you remember? You remember Sergeant Soltis?
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
I talk to him all the time on Facebook.
Yeah, so do I do too. I remember. I think it was your company. A kid from, I don't remember if it was Animal or Baker, tried to steal the guidon in Kuwait.
That was my company. That was Lance Corporal Downey. We talk about that. Oh my God, he stole the guidon. Jackass.
I almost
killed him. I
go, Soltis, someone's stealing the guidon. I think Soltis is pushed me out of the way and caught the kid. I got there and I'm I think then Soltis was probably going to kill him because Soltis was Charlie Company through and through, without a doubt. If he would bleed Charlie Company. But I think I
think if I hadn't showed up, the kid would have been dead.
Yes, I think
they were ready to kill him when I showed up.
I'm I literally was okay, I'm out of here. This is an enlisted thing. I'm going to let them take care of it.
Hey, do you know what I did though, sir? Is I made him give the guidon back, but then I made him learn the history of Charlie Company, and then I made him go over to Charlie Company and give him a class on the history of Charlie.
Yeah, and Soltis
motherfucker.
Soltis respected the kid for that after that because he's and then because I think Soltis then corrected him too on some of the history and stuff. So
yeah. Hey, he still talks about it to this day. He's a big old biker dude now, big old beard, big old Harley Davidson dude. Yeah,
I remember he was small, and stuff like that.
Yeah, he was a little shit too.
His face when Soltis caught him, he was a white kid. He was white as a ghost. He literally was probably shitting in his pants. Yeah.
When I joined the Marine Corps, I weighed 129 pounds. So I'm a 180, 175, 180 right now. So I'm 50 pounds heavier than when I joined.
Yeah. So I don't think I've been 100.
It didn't take long to put on weight though.
I don't think I've been 120 pounds since I was in 6th grade. So I've always been that. I don't know that I would have made it.
Well,
a lot of weight.
I was a fighter, so the lower your weight is, the better.
Yeah, no, for sure. And all the running and rucking and all the stuff you guys do.
Yeah.
Adam, I know you got a heart out, and this is what I'm saying. I knew we were going to do this, and you've got more episodes, but I want to kind of end it with this, if it's okay, Sergeant Major, because you guys have both kind of talked about it back and forth, and I'll try to phrase the question correctly. What makes a good Marine as opposed to somebody who you're this guy's fucking done, or girl, whatever, however it works out. What would you have to see in a Marine to say this person's worth my time? This person can fuck off. Because the guy who spent 30 minutes explaining parachutes to you instead of 8 minutes, again, rightfully so, but there's something that they have to, and I'm referring to you, Sergeant Major. What did you see? What did you have to see to be this person's worth my time? Even if they were fucked up when you got a hold of them.
Well, actually, I'm going to steal what an officer told me when I was a young Marine. He said, there's no such thing as a fucked up Marine. Okay. There's just Marines in bad jobs. And what he meant by that is you could take an infantry guy and put him in supply and he'd love his job. And then you could take that guy that hates supply and put him in a grunts, and he'd love his job. So we would never do this, but I'd always thought that what we should do is the Marine Corps everybody should be infantry for 2 years for one deployment.
Oh, that'd be great.
And then you should send them to the MOS the staff NCOs and the officers get together and say, this guy should be admin, he should be that. But you should send the guys instead of some recruiter deciding what your MOS is. You should have to earn the MOS, I think. But who the hell am I? Go ahead, sir.
No, you finish, Sergeant Major. I'm sorry.
No, but I just want to say, Tyler, that I had multiple cases where Marines were considered bags of shit. Yeah. I'll give you one example. I'm a Sergeant Major. Another Sergeant Major says, I'm sending a gunny to you. Do whatever you want with this piece of shit. He's not under your rolls. He's not under your numbers. Make him pick up cigarette butts in the parking lot. The next morning, this gunny shows up, this grunt, freaking in his LPs, he's stacked, he's a badass. And I go, Gunny, the fuck is going on? He goes, I pissed off the wrong people. I says, okay, Gunny, we got two choices. Sergeant Major, I won't say his name, said to have you pick up cigarette butts. That's fine. Or I need a first sergeant over at Marksmanship Training Company. What do you want to do? He goes, I'll be the first sergeant. I says, good. Go introduce yourself. I didn't introduce him. I was going to go over there. That guy went over and just took over. Best freaking first sergeant I ever had in that company in 3.5 years. But he was a piece of shit from another company. So, yeah, but there are shit bags. There's always going to be shit.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. I guarantee you, even in the Secret Service,
Oh, yeah.
you had your 10%.
Oh, yeah.
But, I actually shot next to, when I went through a high-risk personnel course, the dude next to me was Secret Service. And he was shooting out, this is back in the 90s, and he was shooting a 357, a SIG.
Yep.
And oh my God, we were shooting at these like rubber targets that go across. The 357 was destroying all the targets.
Yeah.
The damn instructor's like, what the hell, Secret Service? You're killing us.
Yeah.
Because the 9mm would go right through.
Yeah.
But no, that 357 was just tearing the rubber to pieces.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that's what I started.
Killing.
I gotta say one, like to add to the Sergeant Major about that. Like remember Sergeant Major, when you had OOD and staff duty, you would have the restriction Marines come in. Remember they had a sign in every hour on the weekends.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, the majority of the Marines on restrictions were like, I don't know if they were the shit. They were just like, they were the problem child, but they weren't bad.
They got in trouble.
Yeah, they got in trouble. And you would always have like a couple stellar NCOs that got caught. And they were even though they were on restriction and stuff, they were still some of the best. But my big thing was I hated when the Marines would all like trickle in. I said to I remember I had a couple like a corporal and a sergeant. I said, this is what we're going to do. I go, get everybody down here all at one time. They line up outside. They come in and sign it. I'm not going to do it. So I want to make sure that I get everybody. You may, and this is, and they're like, Roger that. So they started doing that. And then I said, because the restriction Marines had to come in camis on the weekends, I said, you guys are going to the gym? They're like, yeah, maybe. I go, well, the uniform for the gym is green on green, correct? They're like, well, no, you go. They're like, well, sir, you can wear. I go, it's green on green. So if you're at the gym and you need to come to do, to come back and do your restriction, that's fine. So I let the Marines come in green on green. As long as they didn't all have to be in camis or green, like if they were PT, because guys were like, thank you, sir, I wanted to PT. But I remember going back to Super Squad, Sergeant Major, I remember, so when we got back from Oki, I asked to take leave at a different time than the battalion because my brother was getting married. So they're like, yeah, but they're like, you're going to be one of the few officers back, so you got to OIC a Super Squad. I'm like, okay. So I had to go out to the field with them. Like, I didn't care. But I had the restriction Marines as my logistics Marines. I'll tell you this, the restriction Marines were on time. Every time. I never had a single problem from anybody. And I did like something that you would have been proud of. When we went out there with the staff, I forgot who the staff sergeant was. I made sure we had enough ammo so they could shoot too. Because because I said to them, last time I checked, you guys are Marines too, and you need to shoot and stuff like that. And I remember because some of the Super Squad Marines were late. And I remember, how come I got guys that are on restriction that are supposed to be the shit bags and you're supposed to be the elite of the battalion? And they're here ready to go and you're late and this and that, but that's the thing. Like you have to work with what you have. And like Sergeant Major said, you have the 10% that like, no matter what you do, there's still going to be shitbags. And Sergeant Major will tell you this, that like, they may be a grunt, but maybe they're really good with like land nav. So you make them in your platoon teaching land nav because some guys are like, oh, I love doing this. Lance Corporal Macaluso was always a pain in the ass, but he's our land nav guru. He's got everybody teaching. That's what you do. You just give someone a job that they like doing and that they're decent at. No one, and Sergeant Major, correct me if I'm wrong, like being a 300 PFTer and double expert and all this stuff doesn't make you the best Marine in the world.
Absolutely not. You might be the worst, actually.
Exactly. I told Tyler the story. I had a company commander that when I was in 29, we hiked every Friday. I was the expert. He was the only one who knew how far we were going. He didn't even tell me how far we were going. And he was a PT machine, 300, I watched him do 37 dead hang pull-ups, I remember. And he promoted a kid to corporal. And I said, hey, sir, can I talk to you? He's like, yeah, sure. What's up, Mac? I go, you promoted so-and-so to corporal. I'm like, he was like a low first class PFTer. Like, and I go, sir, I thought you were like he goes, I thought that was like your thing, like PT. He goes, no. I go, I'll tell you why I promoted him. He told me, he goes, I came in on a Saturday one time and I saw him up there by the East Gym running and doing pull-ups. And he goes, that kid was taking the time to make himself better. I'm going to promote him. So, and I that's another thing I learned. So,
yeah, Adam, what time's your heart out?
I got a jet now. So, yeah. All right, same time tomorrow, gents, 1700 or so, or earlier again.
If we can do earlier, that's great. And then tomorrow, Sergeant Major, I'd like to talk about Marine Corps culture, company culture, and then leadership, and then we can get into your training, if that's okay, sir.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Anything you want.
Awesome. I knew this was going to go. I knew it. That's why I was like, we got to do multiple.
I told you, bro. Listen, I find good people. Great people. Sergeant Major, it's awesome talking to you. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Tyler, text me later, all right?
Yep. Thank you, guys.
All right, sir.
Good night, gents.
Adios, sir. Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Goodbye.